The notification sound from Lana's old MacBook hit Ethan Cole like a slap across the face at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. His wife had been gone for exactly 6 days on her spiritual healing retreat, and the laptop she'd forgotten was synced to her iCloud. The message preview glowed on the dark screen. Can't wait to feel you again tomorrow. Beach House, 2 p.m. Bring the toys we talked about. N. Ethan's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. His hands didn't shake. They never did anymore. 23 years of marriage had taught him to absorb shock like a sponge absorbs water, silently and completely. He set the mug down with deliberate care on his garage workbench, the same precision he used when threading a bolt or calibrating a torque wrench. The MacBook's screen reflected his 42-year-old face, weathered, unremarkable, the kind of face that disappeared in crowds. His neighbors knew him as the quiet guy who fixed their lawn mowers and snowblowers without being asked. But neighbors didn't know about the methodical mind behind those gray eyes. Ethan clicked the message thread open. The conversation history stretched back 2 months. His wife's words to someone named Nico made his stomach turn to concrete. Ethan's working late again. He won't even notice I'm gone. I feel alive for the first time in years. Tessa thinks you're just my yoga instructor. She has no idea how deep this goes. The workshop around him seemed to shrink. Tools he'd organized with military precision hung on pegboards like silent witnesses. The half-restored Mustang in the corner, a project he'd been working on for their anniversary, suddenly felt like a monument to his stupidity. He scrolled deeper into the messages, photos, voice notes, plans that made his 23-year marriage feel like an elaborate lie. But the worst part wasn't discovering his wife's affair. The worst part was the timestamp on the oldest message, July 15th. The day after their anniversary dinner, when Lana had smiled across the table and said she'd never been happier. Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from his daughter, Tessa. Mom says hi. Having amazing time at the retreat. Nico is teaching me meditation techniques. See you next week. Love you, Dad. His 19-year-old daughter. With him. The garage's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across his workbench. Ethan Cole had spent his entire adult life being the reliable one, the invisible one, the one who fixed things quietly and never complained. He'd built a reputation on being predictable. That was about to change. He opened a new browser tab and typed, Colorado legal separation requirements. Then another, private investigator recommendations Denver. Then a third, GPS tracking devices automotive. By dawn, Ethan had a plan. By noon, he had a lawyer. By evening, he had tools his wife would never expect him to use. The next morning, he loaded his pickup truck with camping gear and drove toward the mountains. But he wasn't going camping. He was going hunting. The Serenity Springs Retreat Center sat on 40 acres of pristine Colorado wilderness, 2 hours from Denver. Ethan parked his truck behind a stand of pines overlooking the main lodge and pulled out military-grade binoculars, a gift from his Vietnam veteran neighbor, Roy, who'd insisted every man needed a good pair for bird watching. Through the lenses, he watched his wife laugh at something a man was saying. Nico Rivas looked exactly like his Instagram photos, 30 years old, artificially tanned, wearing linen pants and a confident smile that made Ethan's jaw tighten. The kind of man who called himself a life coach and charged wealthy women $300 an hour to tell them they deserved better. Lana wore a flowing sundress Ethan had never seen before. Her hair was longer, lighter. She moved differently around Nico, touching his arm when she talked, tilting her head like a teenager with a crush. This wasn't the woman who'd barely looked up from her phone during their anniversary dinner. Tessa sat nearby, cross-legged on a yoga mat, watching Nico with the same rapt attention she'd once reserved for her favorite teachers. Her mother had always criticized her for being naive, but Ethan saw something else. A lonely girl desperate for guidance, being led by a hunter who specialized in vulnerable women. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer. Paperwork ready? Just need your signature. He lowered the binoculars and drove back to town. The law office was tucked between a hardware store and a coffee shop, the kind of place that handled divorces and wills without drama. James Sullivan had been Ethan's friend since high school, back when they'd both believed marriage was forever. You sure about this? James asked, sliding the separation papers across his desk. Once you file these, there's no taking it back quietly. I'm sure. Ethan's signature was steady, controlled. How long before she's served? 72 hours. But Ethan, you might want to consider— Don't. Ethan's voice cut through the office's air conditioning hum. I've been considering for 23 years. I'm done considering. He drove home to an empty house that smelled like Lana's vanilla candles and Tessa's art supplies. The silence was different now, not peaceful, but expectant, like the moment before a storm breaks. Ethan went to his workshop and opened the MacBook again. New messages. Your husband seems like the type who'd just accept it. Lucky us. I've been thinking about leaving him anyway. This just makes it easier. Tessa's sweet. Reminds me of myself at that age. So trusting. That last message made Ethan's vision blur red around the edges. He closed the laptop and pulled out his phone. His fingers found Roy's number. Roy, it's Ethan. I need to borrow your cabin. The one up on Granite Peak? Sure, son. Everything okay? It will be. Roy's cabin was a 2-room structure built for hunting season, 20 miles from the nearest paved road. No cell service, no internet. Just woods, a creek, and enough isolation to think clearly. Ethan spent the next 3 days there, planning. He'd learned patience in the Army, precision in automotive repair, and strategy from 23 years of marriage to a woman who thought she was smarter than everyone else. Now he'd combine all 3 skills. He wouldn't hurt anyone. He wasn't that kind of man, but he would make sure they understood exactly what they'd lost. On Friday afternoon, he drove back to town and parked outside the bank. The branch manager, Carol, had known him since Tessa was born. She handled his request to separate their joint accounts with professional sympathy. I'm sorry it's come to this, Ethan. You and Lana always seemed so solid. We were, until we weren't. Ethan closed their shared credit cards and opened a new account in his name only. He transferred exactly half of their savings. He wasn't a thief, just a man protecting his assets. The house was in both their names, but he had other plans for that problem. Saturday morning, he drove to a storage facility outside Denver and rented a unit. By Sunday evening, he'd moved everything that mattered to him: his tools, his father's tool collection, Tessa's childhood photos, and the wooden jewelry box he'd made for Lana on their 5th anniversary. She'd stopped wearing jewelry years ago, but the box still held their wedding rings. He left hers on the kitchen counter with a note, "For when you're ready to be honest." Then he packed a bag and drove to a motel near the airport. The room smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams, but it was clean and anonymous. Exactly what he needed. Monday morning, his phone exploded with calls. Lana's number, Tessa's number, numbers he didn't recognize. He let them all go to voicemail. The first message was from Lana. Ethan, what the hell is going on? I got papers saying you filed for separation? Call me back right now. The second was from Tessa. Dad, Mom's freaking out. She says you moved out. What's happening? The third was from Lana again. This is ridiculous. We can work this out. Don't be dramatic. Ethan deleted them all without listening to the rest. He had work to do. The Denver Public Library's computer lab was nearly empty at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Ethan sat at a terminal in the back corner, creating new email accounts and researching his targets. Nico Rivas had an impressive online presence for a fraud. Instagram, Facebook, a professional website advertising tantric healing and sacred masculine workshops. His client reviews were glowing, written by middle-aged women who used words like transformative and life-changing. Ethan screenshot everything, saved it to a flash drive, and moved to the next phase of his research. Property records showed Nico renting a cabin on Lake Granby, the same lake where Lana had spent her spiritual retreat. The lease was month to month, signed 3 months ago, right around the time the affair started. The cabin's location was perfect for Ethan's purposes. Isolated, with only one access road, surrounded by national forest. He'd done survival training in similar terrain during his Army days. Nico Rivas looked like a man who'd never been more than 50 yards from a Starbucks. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your wife's looking for you. Heard you ran off like a coward. Nico. Somehow he'd gotten Ethan's number. Another text. She deserves better than a man who can't even fight for his marriage. Ethan typed back. You're right. She deserves honesty, something neither of you gave her. Meet me tonight. Lake Granby boat launch, 8 p.m. Let's settle this like men. Ethan stared at the message. Nico was either incredibly stupid or incredibly arrogant, probably both. Men like him had never learned that quiet didn't mean weak. See you there, Ethan typed back. He spent the afternoon at a sporting goods store, buying items that would look innocent on a receipt: climbing rope, carabiners, a headlamp, energy bars, the kind of gear a man might need for a night hike or other activities. At 6 p.m., he drove toward Lake Granby. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and purple. Beautiful country for an ugly conversation. The boat launch was empty except for a single vehicle, a white BMW with California plates. Nico's car, according to the registration Ethan had looked up. The man himself stood at the water's edge, checking his phone like he was waiting for an Uber. Ethan parked 50 yards away and watched. Nico was bigger than he'd looked in photos, maybe 6'2", with the kind of muscles that came from expensive gyms rather than real work. He wore hiking boots that had never seen a trail and a jacket that cost more than most people's car payments. Ethan checked his own gear: pepper spray, zip ties, and a voice recorder. Nothing illegal, nothing that would leave permanent damage, just tools for a conversation. He walked down to the water's edge, his footsteps silent on the gravel. Years of hunting had taught him to move without sound. Ethan? Nico turned with a confident smile. I was starting to think you wouldn't show. I keep my word. Good, because we need to talk about Lana. No, Ethan said quietly. We need to talk about Tessa. Nico's smile faltered. What about her? How old did you think she was when you started grooming her? Grooming? Nico's laugh was forced. Jesus, man, we're all adults here. She's 19. You're 30. You've been manipulating her for months. I've been helping her find herself, something her father apparently never bothered to do. Ethan's right hand moved to his belt where the pepper spray was clipped. Tell me about the messages. What messages? The ones where you called her sweet and trusting. The ones where you talked about her like she was your next project. Nico's confidence was cracking. I don't know what you're talking about. The ones where you convinced her to sleep with you. A teenager who's never had a real relationship, who trusted you because her mother said you were safe. She wanted a father figure. You gave her a hunter. Ethan's voice never rose above conversational level, but something in his tone made Nico step backward. The water lapped against the shore behind him. Look, man, I think you've got the wrong idea. Do I? Ethan pulled out his phone and played a voice message. Tessa's voice, shaky and scared. Dad, I need to talk to you. I did something stupid with Nico. I thought he cared about me, but after it happened, he just acted like it was no big deal. Mom doesn't know. Please don't tell her. I need to come home. Nico's face went pale. Where did you get that? She called me yesterday. Broke down crying. Said you told her it was part of her healing journey. Made her feel like she was the one who initiated it. She did initiate it. She's an adult. She's a teenager whose mother abandoned her emotional development to chase her own midlife crisis. You knew exactly what you were doing. Ethan stepped closer. Nico stepped back again, his heels at the water's edge. What do you want? Nico asked. I want you to understand something. I'm not here to fight you. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to give you a choice. What choice? Ethan pulled out a small recording device. You're going to record a message, an apology. To Tessa, to Lana, and to every woman you've manipulated with your fake guru bullcrap. I'm not recording anything. Yes, you are, because if you don't, I'm going to the police with evidence of your pattern of manipulation. I'm going to every woman who's ever left you a review, telling them about your methods. I'm going to your landlord, your insurance company, and the Colorado Board of Professional Counselors. You can't prove anything. I can prove you've been running unlicensed therapy sessions. I can prove you've been taking money for medical advice without proper credentials. I can prove you've been lying to the IRS about your income. Nico's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You investigated me? I fixed helicopters in the Army. I know how to research problems and find solutions. You're just a problem, Nico. Ethan held up the recorder. 30 seconds. Tell the truth about what you did to my daughter. Tell the truth about how you manipulated my wife. Tell the truth about your business practices. And if I don't, then I let the law handle it. And trust me, you don't want that. Nico looked at the water behind him, then at Ethan's calm, patient expression. After a long moment, he held out his hand for the recorder. What exactly do you want me to say? The confession took 6 minutes. Nico admitted to manipulating Lana's emotional vulnerability, to pursuing Tessa despite knowing she was inexperienced and looking for a father figure, and to running his business without proper licensing. He apologized specifically to both women, admitting he'd used their trust to satisfy his own ego and desires. When he finished, Ethan played the recording back. Nico's voice sounded hollow, defeated. "What happens now?" Nico asked. "Now you pack your things and leave Colorado, tonight. You find a new state, a new career, and you get legitimate therapy for whatever made you think this was okay. And if I don't, then everyone you've ever manipulated gets a copy of this recording. Every woman who trusted you, every business partner, every family member, your choice." Nico nodded slowly. "I need time to pack. You have 2 hours, I'll be watching." Ethan walked back to his truck and waited. Through his binoculars, he watched Nico drive to the cabin, throw belongings into garbage bags, and load his BMW like a man fleeing a crime scene. At 11:30 p.m., the BMW's taillights disappeared down the mountain road. Ethan sat in the darkness for another hour, making sure Nico didn't return. Then he drove back to his motel room. His phone had 17 new messages. He deleted them all without listening. Tomorrow, he'd deal with Lana. Tonight, he'd accomplished something more important. He'd protected his daughter from a hunter. The rest was just cleanup. Tessa came home on Thursday afternoon, 3 days early from the retreat. Ethan was waiting in the kitchen when she walked through the door, her face puffy from crying. "Dad?" She dropped her bags and ran into his arms. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You don't have anything to apologize for." He held her tight, feeling how thin she'd gotten. "None of this was your fault." "But I slept with him. I knew he was with Mom, and He manipulated you. That's what hunters do. They find vulnerabilities and exploit them." She pulled back to look at him. "You know about Mom. I know about everything. Are you getting divorced? We're separated. What happens next depends on your mother." Tessa wiped her eyes. "She's coming home tomorrow. She's been calling me nonstop since Nico disappeared. She thinks you did something to him." I had a conversation with him. He decided Colorado wasn't a good fit for his lifestyle. "Dad, I need to tell you something else." Tessa's voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm late. My period. I took a test this morning." Ethan's hands tightened on her shoulders. "How late?" 3 weeks. The test was negative, but I'm never late. I'm scared. We'll figure it out, together. You're not alone in this. What if Mom finds out? She'll say it's my fault for being stupid. Your mother's opinions about your decisions are no longer relevant to either of us." Tessa looked at him with new recognition. "You're different. I'm the same man I've always been. I just stopped pretending it was okay to be ignored." That evening, Ethan took Tessa to urgent care. The pregnancy test was indeed negative, but the doctor recommended counseling for the trauma she'd experienced. Ethan scheduled the appointment for the following week. "Thank you," Tessa said as they drove home, "for not making me feel like garbage. You're my daughter. Making you feel safe is my job. I'm sorry I let someone else make you feel otherwise. It's not your fault. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have been paying closer attention. You were working. You were always working." "I was hiding," Ethan said quietly. "From your mother's criticism, from problems I didn't want to face. I won't do that anymore." They drove home in comfortable silence. Oh, for the first time in months, Ethan felt like he was actually protecting his family instead of just providing for them. Lana arrived home Friday evening in a fury. Ethan heard her car door slam from his workshop, where he was organizing tools he'd retrieved from storage. He'd moved back into the house the day before, but not into their bedroom. He'd set up a cot in the workshop and installed a lock on the door. "Ethan!" Her voice carried across the yard. "Get out here right now!" He walked to the house slowly, deliberately. Lana stood in the kitchen, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. She wore the same sundress from the retreat, but it looked wrinkled now, desperate. "Where is he?" she demanded. "Where is who?" "Don't play games with me. Nico. He disappeared 3 days ago. No one's seen him since. Maybe he found a new spiritual journey." "Cut the crap, Ethan. What did you do?" "I had a conversation with him, man to man. He decided his services weren't needed here anymore." Lana's laugh was bitter. "Services. Is that what you call it?" "I call it exactly what it was. A hunter taking advantage of two vulnerable women. I'm not vulnerable. I'm a grown woman making my own choices. You're a woman having a midlife crisis, who handed our daughter to a man who manipulated her into sleeping with him. Lana went very still. What are you talking about? Tessa told me everything. How he convinced her she was mature for her age. How he made her feel special. How he used her admiration for you to gain her trust. That's not... Tessa wouldn't... She called me sobbing, scared she might be pregnant. Terrified to tell you because she knew you'd blame her for being stupid. Lana sank into a kitchen chair. She's not pregnant. No, but she could have been. Because while you were busy rediscovering yourself, our daughter was being groomed by a man who saw her as a challenge. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You were too busy feeling alive for the first time in years. Lana's face crumpled. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen, and now we have to deal with it. We? You filed for separation, Ethan. You moved out. You don't get to lecture me about our daughter? I moved out of our bedroom. I filed for separation to protect my assets. I'm not going anywhere until Tessa graduates college. This is my house, too. This is the house where you planned your affair while I was working to pay for your spiritual journey. This is the house where you put our daughter in danger because you weren't paying attention to anything but your own needs. Lana stood up, shaking. I want to hear from Tessa. I want to hear her version. She's at her friend, Sarah's house. She doesn't want to see you right now. She's my daughter. She's our daughter, and she's old enough to decide who she wants to spend time with. You've turned her against me. I've been honest with her. Something you stopped doing months ago. Lana walked to the counter and picked up her wedding ring, which still sat where Ethan had left it. What do you want from me? I want you to take responsibility for what you've done. To Tessa. To us. To yourself. I made a mistake. You made a series of choices, each one designed to meet your needs while ignoring everyone else's. So what happens now? Do you want me to beg? Do you want me to grovel and promise to be a better wife? I want you to get help. Real help. From a licensed therapist, not some fake guru who preys on middle-aged women. And then we'll see if there's anything left worth saving. Lana slipped the ring onto her finger. It looks strange there, like jewelry on a stranger. I do love you, Ethan. I know you don't believe that anymore, but I do. I believe you love the idea of me. The reliable husband who doesn't ask questions or make demands. But I'm not that man anymore. Then who are you? I'm a man who protects his family, even from threats they don't recognize. Lana stared at him for a long moment. You're scaring me. Good. Maybe fear will make you think before you put our daughter in danger again. The next morning, Ethan woke to find Lana making breakfast. She moved around the kitchen like she was trying to resurrect their old routine, but everything felt performance-based, desperate. Coffee? She asked. I make my own now. I know how you like it. You know how I used to like it. People change. Lana set down the coffee pot. I made an appointment with Dr. Morrison for Monday. Good. I want you to come with me to couples therapy. That's not couples therapy. That's individual therapy where you want an audience. I want us to work through this together. There's no us right now. There's you dealing with your choices and me dealing with their consequences. What about Tessa? What about her? She needs both her parents. She needs parents who put her safety before their own desires. She needs parents who model healthy relationships. She needs parents who don't lie to her. I never lied to her. You lied to her every day for 3 months. Every time you said you were going to yoga class. Every time you said Nico was just a friend. Every time you pretended our marriage was solid. Lana's composure cracked. I was trying to protect her. You were protecting yourself. She just happened to be collateral damage. I'm her mother. I love her more than anything. Then prove it. Get help. Deal with whatever made you think endangering her was acceptable. Show her what healthy choices look like. Lana sat down across from him. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken to fix? Then at least you'll know. And she'll know. And we can all move forward with the truth. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? Ethan considered the question. I think forgiveness is about accepting what happened and choosing not to let it poison your future. I can do that, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It doesn't mean going back to the way things were. So what does it mean? It means I can wish you well without needing you in my life. It means I can co-parent with you without being married to you. It means I can remember the good times without pretending they outweigh the bad ones. Lana started crying. I've lost everything, haven't I? You've lost the life you were willing to betray for a few months of excitement. But you haven't lost everything. You still have a daughter who needs you to be better. You still have a chance to figure out who you want to be. What if I want to be your wife again? Then you'll have to become someone worthy of that title. And I'll have to become someone willing to trust you with it. Both of those things seem unlikely right now. Tessa came home that afternoon with red eyes and a determined expression. She hugged Ethan first, then approached her mother cautiously. Mom, we need to talk. Baby, I'm so sorry. I had no idea about Nico. I would never have... Stop. Tessa's voice was steady. I need to say something, and I need you to listen without interrupting. Lana nodded. I'm not a little girl anymore. I'm 19 years old, and I'm capable of making my own decisions. But I'm also inexperienced with men, and I trusted your judgment about Nico because you're my mother. Tessa, I'm not finished. Tessa's voice got stronger. When I slept with him, I thought I was making an adult choice. But afterward, I realized he'd been manipulating me, making me feel mature and special and ready for things I wasn't ready for. Lana's face went pale. I called Dad because I knew he'd help me figure out what to do. I didn't call you because I knew you'd make it about your own guilt instead of my healing. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's what I believed. And the fact that you're already making excuses proves I was right. Lana looked like she'd been slapped. What do you want me to do? I want you to get help. Real help. Not from some guy who tells you what you want to hear, but from someone who will challenge you to be better. I made an appointment. Good. I also want you to understand that I'm going to be living with Dad for a while. Until I feel safe here again. This is your home. This is the house where you brought a man who hurt me. Where you lied to me for months. Where you made me feel like I was the problem for wanting your attention. Lana started crying again. I never meant to hurt you. I know, but you did. And now you have to fix it. Tessa looked at Ethan. I'm going to pack some things. Can I stay at your place tonight? You can stay as long as you need. After Tessa went upstairs, Lana turned to Ethan. Where are you living? I got an apartment. 2 bedrooms. One for me, one for Tessa. You're really leaving. I left months ago, I just didn't know it yet. What if I change? What if I get help and become the woman you fell in love with? Then you'll be a better person. And Tessa will have a mother she can trust again. And maybe someday we can be friends. Friends? Good co-parents. People who care about each other's well-being but don't depend on each other for happiness. Lana looked around the kitchen like she was seeing it for the first time. I don't know how to do this alone. You won't be alone. You'll have therapists, support groups, people who understand what you're going through. You'll have Tessa. If you earn her trust back, you'll have yourself, if you can figure out who that is. What if I can't? Then you'll know that too, and you can decide what to do with that information. That evening, Ethan helped Tessa load her car with clothes and books. They drove to his apartment in silence, both of them processing the end of their family as they'd known it. Dad, Tessa said as they carried boxes upstairs. Do you think Mom will be okay? I think she'll be whatever she chooses to be. That's all any of us can do. Do you think you'll ever get back together? I think we'll always be connected because you're our daughter. But marriage? I don't think so. Are you sad about that? Ethan considered the question. I'm sad about what we lost, but I'm not sad about what we're gaining. What are we gaining? Honesty, self-respect, the chance to build something real instead of something convenient. They spent the evening setting up Tessa's room and ordering pizza. It felt like the beginning of something new. Scary, but honest. 3 weeks later, Ethan sat in Dr. Morrison's office, alone. Lana had been coming to individual therapy sessions, but this was his first appointment. She's making progress, Dr. Morrison said. But she's struggling with the idea that actions have permanent consequences. She wants to go back to the way things were. She wants to undo what she's done. That's different from wanting to change. What's the difference? Change means accepting responsibility and building new patterns. Undoing means pretending the damage never happened. Can she learn the difference? That's up to her. But I can tell you that real change requires accepting that some things can't be fixed, only transformed. And if she can't accept that, then she'll keep trying to manipulate her way back to comfort instead of growing into wisdom. Ethan nodded. What about Tessa? She's seeing Dr. Patricia Chen for individual therapy. Young women who've been manipulated by older men often struggle with trust and boundaries. But she's smart and she has a strong support system. Me? You, yes. But also herself. She's developing good instincts about people and situations. She wants to stay with me until she goes to college. That sounds healthy. She needs space to process what happened without feeling responsible for her mother's emotional state. Lana thinks I'm turning Tessa against her. Are you? I'm being honest about what happened. I'm not sugarcoating it or pretending it was less serious than it was. Then you're doing your job as a parent. Protection sometimes means acknowledging danger, not minimizing it. After the session, Ethan drove to the coffee shop where he'd started meeting with Roy once a week. The old veteran had become an unlikely confidant, someone who understood the weight of making hard decisions. How's the girl? Roy asked. Better. She's starting to trust her own judgment again. And the wife? Ex-wife soon. She's in therapy, but I think she's still hoping for a miracle that lets her avoid consequences. Some people learn from pain. Others just look for ways to avoid it. Which type is she? Which type do you think she is? Ethan stirred his coffee. I think she's someone who's never had to face real consequences for her choices. Someone who's always found ways to blame circumstances or other people. And now? Now she's facing consequences she can't blame on anyone else. It's breaking her down, but I don't know if it's building her up. That's not your job anymore. No, but it affects Tessa. The girl's smart. She'll figure out how much of her mother she can handle. I want her to have a relationship with Lana. I don't want my anger to poison that possibility. Your anger. I'm furious, Roy. Not just about the affair, about Tessa, about the lies. About 23 years of being treated like a convenient appliance. Fury's not a bad thing as long as you aim it right. What do you mean? Fury at injustice makes you fight for what's right. Fury at betrayal makes you protect what matters. But fury at yourself for being blind? That just eats you alive. Ethan nodded slowly. I keep thinking I should have seen it coming. You trusted your wife. That's not stupidity, son. That's what marriage is supposed to be. She didn't trust me enough to tell me she was unhappy. Because she wasn't looking for solutions. She was looking for excitement. They sat in comfortable silence, watching traffic through the coffee shop window. Finally, Roy spoke again. You know what I learned in Vietnam? The difference between a tactical retreat and running away. What's the difference? Tactical retreat is about position. You fall back to higher ground so you can see clearly and plan your next move. Running away is about fear. Which one am I doing? You tell me. Are you in a better position now than you were 6 months ago? Ethan considered it. Yes, I know the truth. I'm protecting Tessa. I'm not wasting energy on a marriage that was already over. Sounds tactical to me. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday in November. Ethan signed them in his apartment kitchen while Tessa did homework at the table. The process had taken 4 months, slowed by Lana's attempts to negotiate terms that would allow her to keep the house and half his retirement savings. How do you feel? Tessa asked, looking up from her calculus textbook. Relieved, Ethan said honestly. Like finishing a job that should have been done a long time ago. Do you regret marrying her? I regret staying married to someone who stopped being my partner. But I don't regret the good years, and I don't regret having you. She wants to have dinner this weekend, all 3 of us. What do you want? I want to try, Doctor. Jen says I need to figure out what kind of relationship I can have with her. Then we'll try. The restaurant Lana chose was Neutral Territory, a chain steakhouse where they'd never been together as a family. She arrived 10 minutes late, apologetic and nervous, wearing a dress Ethan didn't recognize. You look good, she said to him. Younger. I feel younger. And Tessa, honey, you're glowing. College applications must be going well. They are. I got into Colorado State. Early admission. That's wonderful. Your father must be so proud. We're both proud, Ethan said carefully. It's a good program for veterinary medicine. The dinner conversation felt like negotiating a minefield. Lana tried to resurrect old family jokes and shared memories, but everything felt forced. Tessa was polite but distant, answering questions without offering information. I've been in therapy for 5 months now, Lana said over dessert. Doctor? Morrison says I'm making progress. What kind of progress? Tessa asked, understanding why I made the choices I made. Taking responsibility for the damage I caused. And what damage did you cause? Ethan's voice was neutral, but the question hung heavy in the air. Lana looked down at her plate. I betrayed your trust. I put Tessa in danger. I destroyed our family for selfish reasons. Do you understand why those things were wrong? Tessa asked. Yes. I understand that I was thinking only about my own needs. I understand that I convinced myself everyone else would be fine because I needed to believe that. And now? Ethan asked. Now I'm trying to figure out how to be someone who considers other people's feelings before making decisions that affect them. How's that going? It's hard. I spent 41 years believing that if I was happy, everyone around me would be happy too. Changing that mindset is like rewiring my brain. Tessa leaned forward. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Okay. If Nico hadn't manipulated me, if he just stayed focused on you, would you still have ended the affair? Lana was quiet for a long time. I don't know, she finally said. I want to say yes, but Dr. Morrison is teaching me not to give answers I think people want to hear. So you might have kept seeing him. I might have. I was obsessed with feeling special, feeling chosen. I wasn't thinking about consequences. Even though it was destroying your marriage, I had convinced myself the marriage was already dead, that your father and I were just roommates going through the motions. Ethan spoke quietly. Did you ever consider talking to me about that feeling? I was afraid you'd agree with me. And if I had agreed, then we would have had to make hard decisions. I wasn't ready for hard decisions. So, you made them in secret. I made them badly. In secret, dishonestly, and without considering anyone but myself. The conversation continued for another hour, careful and painful. By the end, nothing was resolved, but Ethan felt like they'd at least established honest ground rules for whatever relationship they'd have going forward. Can we do this again? Lana asked as they prepared to leave. Maybe once a month? Tessa looked at Ethan. What do you think, Dad? I think that's up to you. You're the one who has to rebuild trust with your mother. Once a month, Tessa said. But if you lie to me about anything, even something small, we stop. I understand. And no questions about my relationship with Dad. No trying to get information about his life through me. I understand. And if you start dating someone, I want to meet them before you introduce them to your life permanently. Lana's face went pale. I'm not ready to date anyone. Good. Because I'm not ready for you to date anyone either. After Lana left, Ethan and Tessa walked to his truck in the parking lot. How do you feel? He asked. Like I just negotiated a peace treaty with someone I don't entirely trust. That's probably accurate. Do you think she's really changed? I think she's trying to change. Whether she succeeds depends on how committed she is to doing the work when it gets harder. And if she doesn't succeed, then you'll know where you stand, and you can plan accordingly. They drove home in comfortable silence. Ethan felt something shift inside him, like a weight he'd been carrying finally settling into a manageable position. Christmas morning arrived, gray and cold. Ethan woke in his apartment to the smell of coffee and pancakes. Tessa was already up, moving around the kitchen with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to take care of herself. Merry Christmas, Dad. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. She handed him a wrapped box. Inside was a leather tool organizer, custom-made with his initials embossed on the cover. For your new workshop, she said. When you buy a house. I haven't said anything about buying a house. You don't have to. I can see you planning it. You get the same look when you're designing something. She was right. He'd been looking at properties on the outskirts of town, places with enough land for a real workshop and maybe a garden. places where he could build something from scratch instead of repairing someone else's mistakes. "There's something else," Tessa said, pulling out a thick envelope. "I wrote you a letter. Don't read it now. Read it later, when you need to remember why you made the right choices." Ethan hugged her tightly. "I love you, kiddo. I love you too. And Dad, I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For protecting me. For showing me what integrity looks like. For not letting anger make you into someone you're not." They spent the morning opening presents and eating breakfast. At noon, Tessa left to have dinner with Lana, part of their monthly arrangement. Ethan used the quiet afternoon to read her letter. "Dad, I'm writing this on December 15th, sitting in our apartment while you're at work. I wanted to put down in words what this year has taught me, so you'll have it when you doubt yourself. When everything fell apart, you could have chosen revenge. You could have destroyed Mom publicly, humiliated Nico, made everyone pay for hurting you. Instead, you chose protection. You protected me from a hunter, protected yourself from further betrayal, and even protected Mom from the worst consequences of her choices. You showed me that strength isn't about dominating people who hurt you. It's about refusing to let their choices define your character. You could have badmouthed Mom to me, tried to turn me against her. Instead, you let me figure out for myself what kind of relationship I could have with her. You gave me space to be angry without making my anger about your pain. You could have stayed bitter and closed off. Instead, you became more open, more honest, more present. You showed me what it looks like to grow from trauma instead of being destroyed by it. I know this year has been the hardest of your life. I know there are days when you wonder if you did the right thing, if you could have handled things differently. I want you to know that from where I sit, you handled everything perfectly. You saved me, Dad, not just from Nico, but from believing that I had to accept betrayal as normal. You showed me what it looks like to have standards, to protect yourself, to demand honesty from the people you love. I'm going to college next year, and I'm going to meet men who will try to manipulate me, charm me, convince me to compromise my values. When that happens, I'm going to remember watching you refuse to compromise yours. I'm going to remember that loving someone doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior. Thank you for being my father. Thank you for showing me what a good man looks like when everything goes wrong. I love you." Tessa Ethan read the letter 3 times before folding it carefully and putting it in his wallet. Then he sat in his empty apartment and cried, not from sadness, but from relief. Whatever else had gone wrong this year, he'd done right by his daughter. Spring arrived early, bringing with it the kind of crisp mountain air that made Ethan want to work with his hands. He'd found a property, 3 acres outside town with a small house and a barn that could be converted into a workshop. The owner was motivated to sell, and Ethan's credit was solid. He was signing the purchase papers when his phone rang. Lana's number. "Ethan, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I'm dating someone." "I know Tessa said she wanted to meet anyone I was serious about, but this is new, and I wanted you to hear it from me first." Ethan felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no jealousy, no curiosity. Just mild interest, like hearing about a coworker's vacation plans. "Okay. That's it, just okay? What else do you want me to say?" "I don't know. I thought you might be upset." "Lana, we've been divorced for 4 months. You're free to date whoever you want." "But we were married for 23 years. "Yes, we were. Past tense. Don't you feel anything about this?" "I feel hope that you found someone who makes you happy in honest ways. I feel concern that you choose someone who's good to Tessa. I feel relief that you're moving forward instead of looking backward." There was a long pause. "I miss you sometimes. I miss who we used to be too. But those people don't exist anymore. Could they exist again? With other people? I think I'm learning how to be someone better than who I used to be. I hope you are too." After he hung up, Ethan finished signing the papers for his new house. The realtor shook his hand and gave him the keys. "Congratulations, Mr. Cole. What's the first thing you're going to do?" "Build a workshop," Ethan said. "A real one." He drove to the property and walked through the empty house, making mental notes about repairs and improvements. The kitchen needed updating, the bathroom needed new fixtures, and the whole place needed paint. But the bones were solid, and the view from the back porch looked out over rolling hills and pine forest, perfect for starting over. That evening, Tessa helped him move boxes from the apartment to the house. They worked until sunset, carrying furniture and organizing rooms. This feels right, she said, standing in what would become her room when she visited from college. It feels like home, Ethan agreed. Do you think you'll ever remarry? I don't know. I'm not looking for someone to complete me anymore. I'm looking to complete myself first. What would you want in a wife if you ever wanted one again? Ethan considered the question. Someone who tells the truth even when it's hard. Someone who considers other people's feelings before making decisions that affect them. Someone who can be alone without being lonely. Someone who's not mom. Someone who's learned lessons your mother is still learning. They finished moving as the stars came out. Ethan stood on his new back porch, listening to crickets and feeling something he hadn't experienced in years: contentment. His phone buzzed. A text from Roy. Heard you bought the Henderson place. Good choice. Stop by tomorrow. I'll help you plan that workshop. Another text from his lawyer. Finalization papers filed. You're officially a free man. A third text from Tessa. Home looks good on you, Dad. Ethan smiled and put the phone away. Tomorrow, he'd start building his workshop. Next week, he'd paint the kitchen. Next month, Tessa would graduate high school, and he'd help her move into her dorm room. The future stretched ahead of him, uncertain but honest. He'd lost a marriage, but he'd found his integrity. He'd lost the illusion of a perfect family, but he'd gained a real relationship with his daughter. He'd lost 23 years of history, but he'd gained the chance to write a better story. As he walked back into his house, Ethan Cole felt something he hadn't experienced since he was young. The excitement of not knowing what came next, but trusting himself to handle it well. 6 months later, on a Tuesday morning in October, Ethan was installing new shelving in his workshop when a car pulled into his driveway. Through the window, he saw a woman getting out of a blue Honda, mid-30s, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, carrying what looked like a broken lawnmower part. He walked outside to meet her. Mr. Cole, I'm Sarah Mitchell. I live about a mile down the road. Roy said you might be able to help me with this. She held up the broken part. My mower died yesterday and I can't afford to buy a new one. Let me take a look. She was pretty in an understated way, with intelligent eyes and calloused hands that suggested she wasn't afraid of work. While Ethan examined the broken part, she looked around his property with the appreciation of someone who understood the effort required to maintain it. This is beautiful, she said. Did you do all this work yourself? Most of it. It's been a good project. Roy says you're the best mechanic in 3 counties. Roy exaggerates, but I can probably fix this. He spent 20 minutes in his workshop welding the broken housing and replacing a worn gasket. When he brought the part back outside, Sarah was sitting on his porch steps, scratching his neighbor's dog behind the ears. How much do I owe you? She asked. Nothing. Neighbors help neighbors. At least let me buy you dinner. There's a good barbecue place in town. Ethan looked at her carefully. She wasn't flirting, just offering a practical exchange. Honest gratitude, nothing more complicated. I'd like that, he said. Friday night? 7 o'clock? Friday works. As she drove away, Ethan realized he was looking forward to Friday, not because he needed someone to complete him, but because he was finally complete enough to enjoy good company. That evening, he called Tessa at college. Dad, how's the workshop coming? Good, I met someone today. Someone? A neighbor. She seems nice. Are you asking her out? She's buying me dinner Friday night. That's great. What's she like? Honest, independent. She fixes her own lawnmower. Tessa laughed. Sounds like your type. I'm not sure I have a type anymore. You do. You like people who don't need you but choose to spend time with you anyway. After they hung up, Ethan sat on his back porch and watched the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. In the distance, he could see lights coming on in houses where families were sitting down to dinner, where couples were sharing their days, where children were doing homework and arguing and laughing. He felt connected to all of it without needing to possess any of it. For the first time in his adult life, he was enough by himself. Everything else was bonus. Friday arrived clear and cold. Ethan showered, put on clean jeans and his best flannel shirt, and drove to town. The barbecue restaurant was crowded with families and couples, filled with the kind of comfortable noise that comes from people enjoying each other's company. Sarah was already there, sitting at a corner table, reading a book. She looked up when he approached and smiled, a real smile, not the practiced expression of someone trying to impress. How's the mower running? He asked as he sat down. Like new. You saved me about $300? Good. What are you reading? She showed him the cover, a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt. Research for a paper I'm writing. You're in school? Graduate school, history PhD. I teach part-time at the community college. They talked through dinner about books, local politics, the challenges of rural living, and their shared love of working with their hands. Sarah restored old furniture as a hobby, turning cast-offs into beautiful functional pieces. There's something satisfying about taking something broken and making it work again, she said. I've always thought so. Roy says you went through a divorce last year. Roy talks too much. He cares about you. He says you handled it with more grace than most men would have. I handled it the only way I knew how. With integrity. With stubbornness. I refused to become someone I couldn't respect. Sarah nodded. That's harder than it sounds. What about you? Ever married? Engaged once. Realized just in time that I was more in love with the idea of marriage than with the person I was marrying. What happened? I called it off 3 weeks before the wedding. Lost some friends, disappointed some family members, but saved both of us from years of pretending to be happy. Any regrets? About calling it off? None. About waiting so long to call it off? A few. They walked to their cars in comfortable silence. The evening had been easy, natural, without the desperate energy of people trying too hard to impress each other. I'd like to do this again, Sarah said. So would I. How about Saturday? I'm refinishing a dining table. I could use someone with mechanical skills to help me get the old varnish off. You want me to help you work? I want to spend time with someone who understands that the best conversations happen when your hands are busy. Ethan smiled. Saturday works. As he drove home, Ethan realized he was humming, something he hadn't done in years. Not because everything in his life was perfect, but because everything in his life was honest. 2 years later, Ethan stood in his workshop, putting the finishing touches on a rocking chair he'd been building for Tessa's graduation from veterinary school. Sarah sat nearby, grading papers at the workbench he'd built for her when she'd started spending more time at his place. Your daughter called, she said without looking up from her work. She wants to know if you're bringing a date to graduation. What did you tell her? I told her that was up to you. Ethan set down his sandpaper and looked at the woman who'd quietly become the center of his daily life. They'd been together for over a year, but they'd taken everything slowly, honestly, without the desperate rush of people trying to escape loneliness. Would you like to come to my daughter's graduation? I'd love to meet her properly, but I want you to be sure you're ready for that step. I've been ready for months. I was waiting for you to be ready. Sarah smiled. I've been ready too. I was waiting for you to ask. They worked in comfortable silence until sunset, then sat on the back porch sharing a beer and watching the mountains turn purple in the distance. Ethan? Sarah said quietly. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For being someone worth waiting for. Thank you for being someone worth becoming better for. That night, Ethan called Tessa to tell her about Sarah, about graduation, about the life he'd built from the ashes of his marriage. Dad, you sound happy, Tessa said. I am happy. Different kind of happy than before? Better kind of happy. The kind that doesn't depend on other people behaving the way I want them to. I can't wait to meet her. She's going to love you. How do you know? Because she's smart enough to see what I see when I look at you. What's that? The strongest, most honest person I know. After they hung up, Ethan walked through his house, looking at the life he'd built with his own hands. The kitchen he'd renovated, the workshop where he'd learned to create instead of just repair, the guest room where Tessa stayed when she visited, the living room where he and Sarah read together in the evenings. Everything was chosen, intentional, honest. Nothing was perfect, but everything was real. In his bedroom, he found the letter Tessa had written him 2 years ago, still kept in his wallet. He read it again, remembering the man he'd been then, angry, betrayed, determined to protect what mattered most. That man had made good choices. He'd chosen integrity over revenge, protection over destruction, honesty over comfort. Those choices had led him here, to this life, to this version of himself. Ethan Cole had learned that the best revenge against betrayal wasn't hurting the people who'd hurt him. The best revenge was becoming someone who couldn't be betrayed again. Not because he was closed off, but because he was strong enough to choose love without needing it, to offer trust without depending on it, to build a life that could weather any storm. As he turned off the lights and prepared for bed, Ethan felt the deep satisfaction of a man who'd looked into the abyss and chosen to build something beautiful instead of falling in. His phone buzzed one last time. A text from Lana. Saw the announcement about Tessa's graduation. I'm proud of her, and proud of the father who raised her. Ethan smiled and put the phone away without responding. Some conversations belong to the past. His future was waiting in the next room, grading papers by lamplight, humming softly to herself as she worked. He'd spent 23 years trying to fix a broken marriage. Now he was spending his time building a whole life. It was the better choice. The end.